Hey everyone, welcome back. It's another Sunday, which means 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. We are here with After the Buzzers. I'm say I'm your moderator. As anyone who watches this show, I got to keep these guys in order. I got my Hall of Famer Marv Orange over here, and I've got, of course, I call him the Professor Lee Jones. A lot going on today. Happy WrestleMania Day for those who like wrestling. But we also just had the women's championship. Got the men's championship going on. We still got Marv representing Alabama. I love it. Not a bandwagon guy. He knows his team. He knows who he reps. But we've got a lot to talk about, so we're really going to get into this quick. But let's do a quick rundown, guys. We will talk about South Carolina. Congratulations to them. Perfect season. Kind of recap that game a little bit. Then we'll look ahead to tomorrow. UConn and Purdue. Talk about that a little bit. Then also, as we talk about the women's game, we're going to talk about how is it evolving? A lot of conversation. I'll tell you guys real quick. I had a buddy call me 2 days ago. He was in Cleveland for the games. You know, he's like, forget the men's. I'm going to the women. So he was at the Final Four for that. So we'll talk about that. I'll give you a little bit of his perspective from what he told me. Bronny James, we were just having a discussion a little bit before we went on the air. Bronny James has entered the draft and the portal. So he's leaving USC. Talk about everybody's thoughts on that. Stefon Diggs, a big trade going to the Texans. How does that help the Texans? And then what does it do for the Buffalo Bills as well? We got to look at that angle, I think, as well. We got a couple more. The Super Conference guys, they've been talking about that all week. The president's come up with a 10-team division, 70 of the top teams. We'll kind of get your thoughts on that. And then we'll get a little business side this week. We'll wrap it up talking about, should public funds be funding some of these stadium renovations? I know Kansas City was a big thing that was in the news this week, trying to vote on that and see where that comes. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Hey, guys, let's get into it. First off, don't hesitate. Please like and subscribe. Make sure you're commenting. We're getting some great comments. I know there's going to be a lot of back and forth today. So I'm going to start with Lee right there. The women, Caitlin Clark had a great run, but they ran into an undefeated Gamecock program, 10th team in the history of the NCAA to win and go undefeated. Talk about Dawn Staley, her team, and shutting down Clark. I thought Clark didn't have a great game in the semifinals. You know, she had a big run in the first half. But what do you think about the Gamecocks? You know, taking the title today?
Yeah, shout out to Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks for winning the championship today. It was a great game, a really good game. You know, initial thoughts of the game. Caitlin Clark came out like gangbusters, right? She was on in the first quarter, but their defensive scheme against South Carolina really took focus in the second through the end of the game, and they really sort of shut her down and neutralized her for the whole game. Really putting bodies on her, running her through screens, helping out on her. And the main thing that I saw in the game overall, South Carolina was just too big and too athletic. The Cardoza young lady, the other ladies that came off the bench, South Carolina out athletic them, and they were bigger. And so I just take my hats off to them. When South Carolina didn't turn the ball over, you saw the dominance that they played with. They got a little sloppy several times during the game and let Iowa get back in it. But they contested shots very well. And once they settled down and just ran their offense, wow, it was just the size difference was overwhelming, and you saw it. I like Dawn Staley relying on those freshmen that came in there and played well today. So yeah, the future is still bright. Undefeated national champion. I like Dawn Staley's humility at the end of the game. What a great leader. What a great young lady. And hats goes off to the Gamecocks for their championship run.
And Mark, do you think, one thing I'm thinking about, a lot of pressure put on Clark. I felt like in the semifinals, she tried to press too much, to do too many things. To me, South Carolina, they were kind of had a little chip on their shoulder. Everybody's talking about Clark, and they went in there. And as Lee just said, I mean, I think they cut it to 8, but then at the end, they just Iowa couldn't do anything. Do you think the pressure was too much on Iowa, and South Carolina just played their game and was able to win?
I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of what Lee said. I think he kind of hit it on the head. South Carolina's just too big. They were too athletic. They were better practically in every position on the floor. Even when Iowa started off hot, Caitlin had 18 points to start that first quarter. mean, you knew that South Carolina's size was going to eventually wear on them, and you saw it. Iowa just really couldn't hold them off the offensive boards, and I think the telling stat of the game was the bench play. South Carolina, I think it was 38-0, if I'm not mistaken, a bench scoring for South Carolina. And that's where the game really was separated. But yeah, Norma Orange talking about the freshman for South Carolina. Absolutely. They've got some Johnson hitting the threes. You got Wiley. She's just going to be a star next year. I also think that South Carolina took a page out of Connecticut's book in guard and Caitlin. They pressed her a lot more. I mean, she's still really, really good at creating space on that three. She's got to kind of back forth that like rock dribble where she creates space, and she's really good at it. But they crowded her just like UConn did, and they had the athletes to do it. They put different bodies on her. And anybody that's played basketball knows when you're constantly getting different and fresh bodies against you, it's hard to maintain and to shoot the ball at the level that she typically shoots it. So I'm not surprised by the outcome. I thought it was inevitable for South Carolina to win. Like Lee said, they just too big, and they're well coached. And Dawn instills a lot of confidence in those young ladies, and it shows when they play. They got a lot of confidence in each other, and they're very unselfish. So I think they are deserving champions. And like Lee said, I want to say as well, just the class with Dawn to shout out Caitlin at the end of the game to talk about the mantle and putting the women's game on her back and carrying it all season. That's a lot of pressure for anybody, especially for a young lady and carrying the women's game the way that she did. So I think that, it was just telling of what a great leader Dawn is. But the women's game is here. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit. It's here to stay. And I think this game, the UConn Iowa game maybe got 12 million. I think the other game got 14 million viewers. So, women's basketball is here. But congratulations, South Carolina, the deserving champions.
Marv, I have a question for you, and I want to ask you this. Do you think that you're a point guard, so you understand this? Do you think that Iowa's lack of a primary ball handler put just a little bit, because she didn't shoot well in the second half, and she's handling the ball, she's bringing it up, she's distributing for other people? Do you think that wears her down, especially in a game against a UConn and a South Carolina? Do you think that took its toll on Caitlin, especially in this game, but also in the UConn game?
Yeah, it has to. I mean, when you're the primary handler and the primary scorer, it's going to affect you. The physicality in which UConn and South Carolina played her with, I mean, that affects you, Lee. There's no way around it. I wish she could have got off the ball a little bit, but that's not Iowa's game. They want the ball in her hands because she's just a great decision maker, and they rode with that all year. You can't really fault them. You can't change it up at that point, but absolutely it wears on you, especially when you get to that level and everybody's good and you got size. And that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like even if they're not blocking her shot or things of that nature, size just makes it really difficult to get the shots that you typically get. And South Carolina did a really good job of mixing that up. So I think that's why you saw her fade in the second half. I think she was spent too, man. The pressure, that UConn game was tough. They went at them. I think she just, she shot it all. She gave it what she had, but I think they just wore it down towards the end. Yeah. It showed.
Yeah. Hey, I want to thank we got Kippy, Sandra, Norma chiming in here. Keep it coming, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on ISF Productions After the Buzzer. Lee, we're going to come back, like Mar said. We're going to talk about the women's game a little bit more in detail, but let's go ahead real quick and preview tomorrow night's game. Big game, UConn. I had UConn in my bracket winning it, but they've got Purdue coming up. I think it's a good matchup. Marv, I have to say, I'm going to start with you, but I have to say I was impressed with Alabama because I wasn't, the way UConn's been dominating, I think Alabama really hung in there with them. And, at some point, I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought they could make a little run and come back. But what's your assessments of both these teams? Purdue stopped the Cinderella story of State, which I think a lot of us thought that they would do that. But you could talk about the Alabama game, or you can preview. Take the floor and talk about UConn and Purdue, though.
Yeah, real quick. Of course, I'm very proud being an Alabama alumnus playing basketball there, watching them do what they did last night, because I don't think anybody gave them a chance to even make that a game. I was a bit surprised about the way UConn. It took them a while to adjust to the way that we play. Trying to run us off the 3-point line. It was surprising that it took them so long to do that. But once they did, and you can filter everything to Klingon that's down, under the basket, it makes everything difficult. Again, we're going to talk about size again. 7'2" matters. and he can move and he's athletic, right?
Yeah.
So when you run and you get people off that 3-point line and you filter them to a big, I played with a guy who led the country in blocks my senior year at Alabama, Roy Rogers. A lot of people probably don't remember him, but they make up for a lot of mistakes that you can make on the perimeter. And Hurley made the decision to say, you know what, we're going to run him off the 3-point line and we're going to filter him to Klingon and we're going to live with it. And, that's what they did. And they made that adjustment, which is why they're so good. But listen, also, they're better in every position in that game. I mean, let's just be real. And Lee and I talked about this earlier, when UConn decided to run their sets, their sets are probably some of the offensive sets are probably some of the most elaborate in the college game in terms of all of the actions that they run off of them. If you slow that game down, I mean, that is hard to defend. And you got guys that are athletically probably better than everybody that's guarding them. And they got so much size. So, if I'm looking at this national championship game, I don't think Purdue stands a chance, to be quite honest with you. UConn is better. UConn is better in every position. Klingon is going to probably equal out Edey. He's good enough to make life, he's not going to stop Edey. He's skilled around the basket, but he's big enough to make life hard for him during the game. They got a backup that can also come in and kind of create some havoc for Edey. And then if you look at Purdue on in every other position, they're just not as good. The Castle kid for UConn, he's a multi-dimensional player. They're 6'4", 6'5", 6'7", and you get 7'2". It's just too much for Purdue to handle. Purdue lives and dies by their point guard. He struggled against NC State. He ended up making some plays to kind of make some separation towards the end, but they live and die with that point guard. He's going to have a tough time against Connecticut. I'm just telling you that right now. So I don't expect this game to be close. I expect it to be close to the half. I think UConn wins this game by 15 comfortably, maybe even more than that. Wow. They're just much more. I saw all I needed to see, Lee. I know that's a lot to say in a national championship game, but the way that they can methodically wear you out on both ends of the floor, and sometimes even if you don't score offensively, those sets take so much out of you. And you saw it with Alabama, the way that we like to pace and space and run. Guarding them offensively took a lot of that away from us as well, because they were so spent running. They taking it to 15, 12 seconds every shot clock and getting whatever shot that they wanted, the elbow, wherever they wanted to put it. So that takes a lot from you too. So yeah, UConn at least 12 to 15. That's going to be my prediction.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know, Mark. Now, I first of all, I got to shout out to your Crimson Tide. Played a great game, and it's hard adjusting to the way you guys play. It really is. Anybody, it's going to take some time. You get shots up. You have to defend. It's quick as well. Y'all shoot the ball very well from perimeter. So that game, it took UConn a little while, but also UConn had to settle down. They just had to settle down, and like you said, they ran their sets, and then it was sort of a wrap. But this national championship game, I think the most interesting thing for me, Marv, is do you play Edey with Klingon one-on-one? Do they match up
Absolutely.
One-on-one?
Absolutely.
I tell you, this is what I'll say. If Edey gets to his spots, Klingon in trouble. There's nothing you can do when he goes to his left shoulder. There's nothing you can do. He's just too big. So I look for foul trouble to be the biggest issue in this game with them. And to your point, I was just going to methodically move the ball around, swing it. If Edey's getting off, Iowa has a chance because they're going to have open threes. If the big guy can't control Edey. And I think that's the whole thing. Run your offense. If they play him man to man, I think they're in trouble. He's 7'2", but he's a light 7'2" if you look at it. And so I think that may be something that's going to factor into this ballgame. Go ahead, Mark.
Here's what I want people to watch, and you made a good point, Lee. Getting the ball to Edey and getting him to his spots. But here's the thing: Purdue plays with no pace, right? They're very methodical, just the way Connecticut is. What's the best way to defend a dominant big man? Making it really, really hard for guards to get to their spot to get a good entry pass, right? Let's see how far Connecticut pushes Purdue out on that perimeter and how far out they have to start their offense. That's what I'm looking for, because I think that athletically, Connecticut is going to put so much pressure on those guards who just are not, let's just be real, they're not up to the athleticism, the physicality that the Connecticut guards are. And I think that's where the game is going to be won, because they're going to make it really, really difficult for Purdue to get into their sets, to get Edey the ball where he feels comfortable. And Klingon is big enough and athletic enough that when he does get it, even if he can push him out of his spot a little bit, and they're running, it's taking them 10, 12 seconds to get into their sets and to where they really like to get him the ball, that's where the key to the game is going to be to me. Not seeing Edey, do his thing on the block. How hard is it going to be for them to get him the ball in his spots to make him effective? That's what I'm going to be looking for.
I agree with you on pace, though, Marv. I think in this game, UConn needs to pick the pace up more. I think they really need to pick the pace up more, get out and run more. And because, to your point, that the athleticism battle, that's UConn all the way. They get up, they're high flying, they get the ball out. So I think a up-tempo pace for UConn factors are better for the win, because if it's a slow down, methodical game, foul trouble is going to be the biggest factor. And do you right. If they push him out and they can't get the entry pass, because, if you push Edey out to foul line, he's not going to do anything. Low box, Cleveland ain't got a chance. So it's all about that. And you're right. How they get the entry pass in is going to be a factor. But I like for UConn to get it up tempo, push that ball, because they're not up to that. Purdue will not be up to that. And I think that's how they eventually win the game. But it's going to be interesting what the foul trouble issue is going to be. You're right, they have size, but Clegan is a factor. He's a factor in there, and we'll see how he fares against Edey. I like it in a close game. I like UConn by 5-7, not really a blowout. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game as well, and so it should be an interesting game going in to the national championship. But I do like UConn.
Yeah, and Dr. O agrees with you. Lee commented, UConn will take it, but it should be close. Norma's got Connecticut all the way. Here's one thing real quick before we go to the next subject. You talked about Edey, Lee. One of the things that he's done all year, he's been able to get people in early foul trouble. And you talk about if he could get to his block and get where he needs to be, do you think that'll play a factor early if he can do that?
Oh, yeah. The foul trouble is going to be huge. I mean, I think like if he gets in that paint, nothing nobody can do about it. There's nothing anyone's going to be able to do about it. But, how they get the ball to him, where they get it to him for him to score, is going to be interesting. He has a tendency to put it down a little bit too, Marv. That's the other thing that is going to be a factor. Get him low enough to be in scoring position once he gets it. It bodes well for Purdue. I just don't know if that's going to occur. And like I said, if Edey can get them in foul trouble, then we can see a very interesting game tomorrow night. Shout out to Elliot, the Lions. Yes, women basketball is here to stay. We're going to talk about that in a minute compared to the men's game. Thank you for listening, brother.
Hey, let's go ahead and get into that. I mean, we can talk about next week. We can talk about tomorrow night's game next week, recap that. But let's go back to the women's game a little bit. You look at a show like ours, you look at a lot of shows like that. It's dominating the headlines these days. And, again, I've admitted last week, I really don't watch women's basketball. No offense to it. It's just I just haven't watched it. But this year, I had sat my whole family, my kids, my parents, we were all watching last week, this week. So I'll start with you, Marv, again. Where do you see this here to stay? Or is this something that, maybe just a one-shot thing and just happened because Clark and Reese and then South Carolina had such a great season? I mean, where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll see maybe a little bit of a drop off with Caitlin going to the NBA, but there's a lot of stars in college basketball that are coming back. USC is going to have a hell of a team next year with Fuwali, and they got two of the top freshmen coming in next year. Connecticut just signed the number one freshman. They got all those girls coming back that were hurt this year. I mean, Connecticut would have been some trouble this year if they would have been healthy. So you got Juju probably coming, doing her thing. The girl in Texas, I can't remember her name right now, but you got a lot of stars in women's college basketball. And also ratings for men's games have been down. The Elite Eight, I think the average viewership was maybe 9 million. I think the Elite Eight game between Illinois and Connecticut only garnered 6 million views or 6.8 million, if I'm not mistaken. And the men's NCAA, the championship game has been down for the last 5 years, averaging about 17 million viewers. So you're seeing the women kind of look, if you watched the game last night, or if you watched any of the games today, what were all the commercials that you saw? I mean, it was Caitlyn, it was Juju, it was nothing but female stars in the commercial. Flau'jae, she got Experian commercials. Like women are taking over in terms of endorsements, in terms of the NIL. I think 6 of the 10 highest NIL evaluations are from women. So I think it's here to stay. And they're typically more of a safe bet when it comes to NIL deals. From companies, they see them as a safer way to endorse their product. So, look, and if you're talking from a pure basketball standpoint, which we like to do on here, if you watch the women game, the only thing that is really missing is the athleticism. I know a lot of people watch the NBA for the dunks and the athleticism that you get that's just unmatched. But if you're watching purely from a basketball standpoint, running sets, fundamentals, the way that you play the game the right way, the excitement from you got about 10 to 12 teams that really could challenge to win a championship. South Carolina was the outlier this year, but typically that's what you got. I think it's here to stay, and I love what I'm seeing, and I myself was more engaged this year, outside of the run by Alabama because I have a personal interest in it, but I was more engaged with the women by far than the men this year.
I didn't hear your answer. Is it evolving to be more popular than the men's game? I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I'm just going on record because I didn't hear it.
I think the numbers right now tell you that it is. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always say numbers don't lie, and the numbers right now shows that the women's game is evolving, and there's an upward trend, and we're going to see next year when Caitlyn gets into the WNBA what kind of trajectory that goes on. I think that's going to be very telling. But yeah, I think it is evolving to be a better watch and a safer bet in terms of all the things that we talked about. I think the women's game is here to stay.
Chris, I think something's wrong with your mic, Chris. So check that out. But I'll jump in here. So I too agree that the women's game is here to stay. I enjoy watching the games. But I do think, Marv, the Caitlin Clark phenomena pushed it to a level beyond the stratosphere, doing 14.2 million for the UConn game, 12 million before, as you quoted earlier. I think that was all Caitlin Clark. But I do enjoy the women's game. The tournament is always exciting. Is it evolving to be more popular than the men's? Next year will be a great litmus test because Cooper Flagg is coming in. That whole group of freshmen that there's going to be at Duke and Kentucky, and when they come in and the popularity that they're bringing with them already, we'll get a chance to really see where the men's game is going. The men's game has lacked stars for the past 4 or 5 years. This new crop of freshmen that are coming in, star power is coming in. And so I'm not ready to give it more popular status than the men's game yet. I'm not going to do that. I do think it's here to stay. I think the people definitely enjoy it. The colleges are selling out. You have some excellent, greater athletes on the women level than you've seen in a long, long time. The shooting, all of that. But if you're going to tell me that it's more popular, I think Caitlin did a lot for that this year. And then the matchup with Angel Reese just took it to another level. And then the fact that they're playing a undefeated South Carolina game, all of those things came together. And that's how you get 14.2 million people watching. And by the way, that's the largest game ever watched on ESPN for a basketball game. So that's tremendous. But I'm gonna slow play this because I know the star power that Cooper Flagg is going to bring in, which is going to be very, very similar to what Caitlin Clark did for Iowa this year as he approaches Duke next year, Marv. So that I'm gonna table that a little bit because I do think college basketball is about to rise with this incoming freshman class.
Hey, so guys, watch this space. Real quick, Chris, before we go, I know we got to move on. Yeah. Watch this space though. The numbers don't lie, right? So 50% of households this year, now listen, 50% of households this year canceled traditional cable subscriptions, right? And what normally comes with traditional cable, ESPN, all those things and the like, right? So the men had more of an outlet in terms of the ability for people to watch games, CBS televised a lot of college basketball games for men. You just now started getting with the NCAA tournament, the women getting on ABC, right? It used to just be exclusively ESPN, and they were still beating the men in ratings this year, even with the less ability to be seen. So that's kind of telling as well. Like, a lot of people have got out of traditional cable and have gone to streaming services and things of that nature. And women were outclassing men in terms of ratings in a lot of ways. So I agree with you, Lee. I mean, we do need to table because there's some exciting guys coming into college basketball next year. But I do find that kind of interesting too.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I agree. You know, the women's game to me has carved out a niche, especially as it gets, South Carolina. Now Kim Mulkey at LSU. You're always going to think back when Iowa plays about Caitlin Clark. And UConn, with all those guys that are injured next year, it's going to be huge, right? Coming back. Texas is on the move. So it's some great women teams out there. But, yeah, I want to see what this class is going to do. Because the hoopla when Cooper Flag hits Duke campus is going to be just outrageous. I mean, outrageous. So it's an interesting topic. I think, like I said, we'll wait and see. But, Marv, you make some great points. You made some very good points.
Yeah, and I want to say this. Sorry, guys, something's wrong with my mic. I'm back on here, but we'll end this segment on this. Dr. O and Norma had some great points. They talked about the coaches. Not only do people know the players now, they know the coaches. I mean, we know Dawn Staley, we know that, but everyone's starting to learn who the coaches are, and I think that brings a greater excitement. What I'm interested to see is, will this translate over to the WNBA as these players get drafted? And that's something I'm, as Lee said, I'll table that right now because I'm not sure that's going to happen. But great comments from everybody, great discussion. Keep them coming here on After the Buzzers. All right, guys, let's stay on basketball, though. This is a big one that's been talking. We talk about the Lakers a lot, LeBron, but we got Bronny James here at USC. Had that cardiac problem a while ago and came back from that and played, but now he's entered the portal and the draft. He's going to have to get cleared, though, by the NBA to even be able to do that. So, Lee, I see you laughing, so I'm going to let you start on that one.
Yeah, because I can't wait till my brother over there starts talking because he's going to take us into fantasy land and start bashing. But let me say this. Let me say this about Bronny. A lot of people have taken shots at Bronny, right? You have to realize he had the cardiac issue in mid to late July. I mean, he had to go through all of that medical stuff. Anybody coming back from anything like that is shocking. And then the utter chaos that was on USC team this year was terrible. I mean, it was terrible. They brought in all those highly touted freshmen, and they didn't get anything done. So his numbers certainly are not going to look like a young man that should be headed to the NBA draft. Now, I'll say that, and then I'll go here, Chris. I think it's a smart thing to go to the pre-draft camps, talk to teams, get evaluated by teams, and then get the feedback. Not signing with an agent is huge because you keep your eligibility, and then you put yourself in the portal. I think it's a great decision. Rich Paul is his pseudo agent anyway. He's going to be the one that represents him. So they're giving him some sound advice because he needs to see where the scouts are talking about and these NBA executives are talking about for him in the draft. And then look at my boy Elliott. Stay at school and develop the game. Come on, E. But anyway, and then you'll get a good evaluation. Look, Bronny James is a three-point shooter. He has tremendous vision. He passes very well. It's in his blood. He has all the traits to be a NBA quality player. Now, the key is, and Elliot, I'll piggyback off of you, good comment, is does he need another year coming off of that cardiac arrest issue and dealing with it to develop his skills, or can he go and into the draft, be healthy, and show the scouts what he can do? Look, people need to understand the NBA game and the college game is two different things. And people try to lump them together. Totally different entities and two different games. So I think it's very smart for him, Chris. Bronny, test the waters, see what's up. If not, transfer. I have a great location for him too, Marv. Those Memphis Tigers. He looked great on the Memphis Tigers team playing for Penny Hardaway, but that's another topic for another day.
Yeah, okay, you kill me right there with the Memphis comment, but I, Cash is in the background talking about they retool them, but that's another conversation for another day. So I do agree with you that I do think that it's very smart for him to test the waters. Evaluation is key. See where he stands in the eyes of the NBA scouts, because that's what matters. They're the people who make the decision in terms of who gets drafted. I think all what's telling is, and all the information that we need is that right now he's ranked 73rd in the transfer portal. That's telling, right? He's that's his value right now in terms of just transferability to another school, right? But always remember what his dad said. His dad said, wherever Bronny goes, that's where I'm going to be, right? Remember, Bron got the $51 million player option coming at the end of this year, right? He could become a free agent. So are the Jameses kind of, setting up some stuff here? They could be, because LeBron is his own power broker. He can make this stuff happen. Maybe they end up in New York. Maybe the Knicks got a lot of capital. They get LeBron in New York, draft Bronny. Who knows? I've seen crazier things happen. But I'm gonna tell you where Bronny gonna end up. See, so y'all gonna hear it here first, because I'm gonna tell you where he's gonna end up. It's not gonna be Memphis. It's not gonna be anywhere. He's gonna end up at Duquesne. So everybody just kind of keep that. Duquesne, LeBron's childhood friend, one of his boys he grew up with. They're going to give Bronny the ball, give him the spotlight, give him an opportunity to showcase all the things that the scouts will tell him this summer about the deficiencies in his game. He's going to go to Duquesne and become the focal point of that team and that offense. He's really good defensively. Now, I'm going to give him credit. He's a really good disruptor defensively on the ball. He's athletic. He's got size. He can shoot it. So there's a place for him, but there's just some things that he's got to show. And I think Duquesne will be the perfect place for him to go, to be able to be the lead guard, to have the ball in his hand, 70% of the time, and to make that team go. They came off a really good NCAA run where they showed some things this past season. They got some good guys coming back. They'll have new leadership with Bron's friend. So I think that's the place that he's going to end up. I'm rooting for the kid. The cardiac issues, you don't wish that on anybody. From all accounts, he's a really good kid. He's really smart. He's handled a lot of things. It's got to be hard being LeBron James' son. Let's just be real. Nobody, he's never going to live up to that. Just like Mike's kids didn't live up to being Mike Jordan's son. You just can't play on that level. But I do think he has a shot. So I'm rooting for the kid, but let's temper the expectations a little bit here. I think he's testing the waters. He's doing the smart thing. And trust me, he got way more smarter people in his camp than we do. So he'll be fine. He'll be all right.
I like Dr. O's comments, but let me say this for those that say about blood is thick in the water. I'm talking about from analyzing Bronny James's game. He's an excellent passer. And Marv, this is my thing about Bronny this year. You didn't see the explosiveness that you saw at Sierra Canyon at USC. And that's what I'm talking about, where the cardiac incident hurt him, right? You didn't see it in his game. And he was just like, when he played this year, because I watched 8, 9, 10 of those games that he played this year, you didn't see that. You saw a little bit of the three. You saw a lot of hesitant in it being in his game. And I'm saying, can you redevelop that as you work through and go through that camp and show the scouts what you're made of? We'll see. But to your point, and it was an excellent one, whatever feedback you get, and if you come back and you transfer, then you take that to the next level. But mark my words, Bronny James certainly is a pro. He has all the skill sets. He's a better shooting Russell Westbrook, in my opinion.
Whoa.
Good. Better shooting Russell Westbrook. He's athletic. He rebounds for a guard, Marv. He shoots the three ball much better. He playmates. He drives the ball to the basket. What did I just name that doesn't remind you of Russell Westbrook? I didn't say he was Russell Westbrook. I didn't say triple doubles every night. I said his skill set is similar than Russell Westbrook with a better shot. I don't think that's indisputable.
I mean, it's not indisputable because we haven't seen it. Like, high school is one thing, and everybody who's played college basketball understands that jump from high school to college is night and day. You playing with grown ass men when you get to the college level, and that's stuff that you could do in high school. Everybody can do it in college. So So, but I do think there was a deficit. I think he was really worried about some of the things that happened, and trust me, I think all of us would be. That's something that replays and it's in the back of your head. And the further he gets away from that, and the healthier he becomes, I think the better he's going to be. But Russell Westbrook, man, he was pretty good at UCLA. He had flashes at UCLA where you was like, okay, all right, I see what they talking about with Westbrook. I hadn't seen it with Bronny yet, so I got to see that first before I'm willing to go where you going right now, talking about a better Russell Westbrook. I got to see that.
Marv, you didn't see Russell Westbrook in the NBA at USC. You didn't see that.
You saw flashes at UCLA. You certainly did. But him and Kevin Love as a freshman, you saw it in that go back and watch that NCAA tournament game he was in.
But I give you that. But I see the complete package of the four things I just named in Bronny right now. And people tend to hate a little bit more on Bronny than they should. Bronny has a skill set. Now I'm talking about coming out of his senior year. This year was an outlier, and we're going to see. I do think he winds up back in college instead of the NBA, and then comes out next year to play with LeBron wherever he's at, probably in Cleveland.
All right, Lee. Well, let me get some of these comments here. Lee, you've confused Dr. O with your Westbrook analogy, but also want to welcome in Mav from LA, and I believe Robert, who have been commenting as well. Thanks for joining us here on After the Buzzers on the ISF Productions here. All right, guys. Quick update. WrestleMania. Anybody that cares? Drew McIntyre just beat Seth freaking Rollins for the title. So there's your first title change of the night. But that being said, let's move on. Hey, football, NFL. I mean, gosh, feels like it's right around the corner. Big trade. Stefon Diggs is going to Texas, but not the Cowboys. He's going to the Houston Texans. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Lee, I'm going to start with you. There's two ways to look at that. I talked about at the beginning. What does it do for the Texans? But then what does it do for the Bills? I mean, there's some takeaways on that trade for the Bills with draft, with, what does Josh Allen have? What can he get? But what are your, when you heard about it, what were your assessments of that trade real quick?
Love the trade from a Houston perspective. I mean, they got Nico Collins, they got Tank Dell, now they add Diggs. They're going to have and then they have Dalton Schultz as a tight end. Your former Cowboy, we let him go because we develop people that way. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But they have an excellent receiving core. And then to throw in there a Mixon from Cincinnati in the backfield, 1,000-yard rusher, their offense is going to be potent. They have a good offensive line. I love the trade for Diggs from a Houston perspective. I think Houston is building. I'll say this. I think Houston right now is probably the third best team in the AFC. You have to give Kansas City one because they're the champs. Baltimore with King Henry back there is two. And then I think there's a legitimate argument for having Houston right there in the third spot with the defense of strides that they've had. They signed Danielle Hunter to go with Anderson. I'll shout out Alabama with Anderson there on the edge. So I love what Houston did and what Diggs is going to bring to the table. Guy runs beautiful routes. I mean, he runs beautiful routes. You get him in the slot. It's hard to cover him. So Houston, they're on the come up. Buffalo, that's going to set Buffalo back. I mean, I think on Buffalo's rosters now, they only have about, with the current receivers that they have, maybe 39 catches totally for all the current receivers that they have, and let's be honest. Josh Allen was helped tremendously by Stefon Diggs coming in. That's when he took off to be the Josh Allen that we know now, as opposed to the Josh Allen that was trash before Stefon Diggs got there. So let's be honest on that. So I think Buffalo takes a step back. I actually think the Jets will win the NFC East this year if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. And I think Buffalo has went back to the pack as far as teams in both the AFC East and the AFC overall, Chris. So I love it for Houston.
What you thinking, Marv? I mean, same thing. I mean, I agree with Lee on I do think it sets Buffalo back. Houston's one of those teams in the right direction. I think Buffalo's got to regroup a little bit, but what are your thoughts?
So I got to preface this, and everybody out there listening, just remember, Lee is a Josh Allen hater. He can't stand Josh Allen. All right. Let's but I'm gonna have to push back on both of you here for a second, right? So why is this so bad for Buffalo? So, and let me just say this, and then I'm gonna let both of you answer this, right? Because you said that Stefon Diggs made Josh Allen who he is. Okay, maybe to an extent, but you went into week 10 of last season, correct? Josh, I think Stefon Diggs led the NFL in receptions and baby yards, or he was like third in yards going into week 10 of last year. What was Buffalo's record? 5-5. Mm-hmm. That was their record. Mm-hmm. Fired Ken Dorsey, right? Mm-hmm. Bought in Joe Brady, mm-hmm. and they focus a little bit more on running the football and mm-hmm. making their team a little bit more multi-dimensional instead of just going to Stefon Diggs, right? Mm-hmm. What was the record after that happened? 6-1. Okay. Buffalo went 6-1 at that point. Now, was it Buffalo kind of setting this up to say that Stefon isn't as important as all of you like to think that he is? Possibly. So Stefon, and I got it right here. For the second half of that, when they went 6-1, he only had 315 receiving yards, which was 57th among wide receivers in that span. 57th. And we talking about a guy that both of you said made Josh Allen, or not you, Chris, but Lee. We love it. He made Josh Allen, but they became a better football team. They became a better football team when Joe Brady came aboard, and they stabilized the offense, and they made it more about everyone rather than Stefon Diggs. So they proved that they could win. They were actually much better when they did that last year than when they were trying to target Stefon Diggs. So I don't know if Buffalo is worse off for it. I think they're actually better off getting rid of Stefon Diggs. And now he's going to become Houston's problem because he can be a free agent after next year. Now, I'm going to give D'Amico Ryans. You gave a shout out to the Bama boys with our edge rusher, but you didn't give a shout out to D'Amico Ryans, the Bama boy, the head coach, or John Mechie, the other Bama boy that's on there doing his thing in wide receiver. But we're going to leave that for another day. That's the SEC hate he got going on. So I think Buffalo actually is better off with Stefon Diggs being in Houston. I think actually both of them won. But let's pump the brakes on saying that Stefon Diggs was so great in Buffalo. They didn't win anything. He can take just as much blame as Josh Allen. I mean, you can give if he's that great, they should be winning something, right?
Well, Stefon Diggs' position is dependent. It's dependent on Josh Allen not falling to the right and throwing interceptions in the end zone.
He led the league in receptions. He was leading the league in receptions and receiving yards. So he was pretty dependent.
I'm not hating on Josh Allen. The facts say that before Stefon Diggs got to Buffalo, Josh Allen was completing 52% of his passes. When he got Stefon Diggs, his game elevated to a new level. State the fact. Those are facts. That's not me making it up. Them are facts. I'm going to use one of your phrases, Mar, that you always say about the Cowboys. They got beat in they lost the first game. So, what's the big deal about them? They got beat. And that new way of running the football and not targeting Stefon Diggs, what did it get you? It got
you the data that you needed to know that you really didn't need him. You was going to lose either way. He was 5-5 with him leading the league in receptions. He was 5-5 with him leading the league in receptions and third in receiving yards. That's what you were. That's what it got you, 5-5.
Look. Josh Allen yelled at Stefon Diggs week 1, and Stefon Diggs basically said, "I want out of here." He played last year.
Stefon AB 2.0.
He didn't make a fuss. He just kept his head down and played. I was hoping Dallas traded for him, but they didn't. But that's okay. That's okay. We'll be all right. He's a great player, and you watch what he does for the Houston Texans next year. Buffalo's in trouble, Mar. Buffalo's in trouble. Mark. And all of you Josh Allen. I like Josh Allen too. I like Josh Allen. But I don't give him the free pass that all you guys get. Y'all give him a free pass. You chop Lamar's neck off. But Josh Allen hasn't done anything, and you give him a free pass. Well, I'm not going to give him a free pass.
Well, please keep that same energy about Dak. You be giving him a lot of free passes, and he ain't won nothing. So keep that same energy. There we go. MVP.
best quarterback in the league. That's all I have to say. I mean, that's
a
fact.
I got we got Recycle Me makes a good point. And Marv, I'm going to go to you on this one before we go to another topic. But he said towards the end of the season, Diggs was being covered like a blanket, and are we calling him a soft tissue? So talk about that
Soft
a
as
little bit.
wet notebook paper.
I have to give Lee a little rib here. I wanted Diggs to go to the Cowboys too, but as Lee says, we develop people, so we don't need a.
Hey, I agree. I mean, the best personnel front office in football is in Dallas. But let me say this about Diggs. Guys, they roll coverage to Diggs. Stop that with he was covered like a blanket. Yeah, because teams roll coverage to Diggs. That's why they could run the ball more. Guys, you got to peel back the onion a little bit. That's why they were a better running team, because they were rolling coverage to Diggs and they could run the football. But that's a different story. Hey, like you always say, Marv, we got weeks coming up, and I keep receipts on this stuff, and I'm sure everybody will keep theirs as well. But I trust me, Houston is going to ball out next year.
Yeah. I mean, I got no dog in the fight, so either way, I could care less. All the teams in Texas to me trash. I mean, Houston, the Texans definitely better than the Cowboys, but I don't really have a dog in the fight, and I certainly don't have a dog in the fight with Buffalo. I'm a Steelers guy, but hey, watch for Russell Wilson to get traded to Dallas after the NFL draft. That's all I'm gonna say. He gonna be all back up.
Hey, the one thing I'll say about Russell Wilson, it was a great pickup for the Steelers, Marv. You're a Steelers fan, and you don't respect the fact that you have a competent quarterback that can lead them somewhere. Shame on you.
I don't know if they're going to keep him.
That's ridiculous.
About as ridiculous as the Cowboys winning the Super Bowl. So, we both ridiculous there.
I gave Recycle Me a shout out. Now he's calling us trash. That's all right. We still love you commenting, Recycle Me. We appreciate it. Yeah. Hey, guys, super conference. Let's go down the college level here real quick. Some of the presidents are proposing that 10-team divisions, 70 schools, 70 top schools. Where do you think that? I mean, we know something's going to happen with all this alignment. To me, there are way too many bowl games that you don't even care about. There's just a lot going on. Marv, I'm going to start with you since we ended with Lee pretty much on that one. Where do you see this going? And do you see this as something that can work? And if it does work, do you see how it can work?
I'm not even going to go into the conversation about is it going to work, or if it does work, is it going to happen? Hell no, it's not going to happen. There's no way it's going to happen, because you got two entities that's not going to allow this to happen. That's called the SEC and the Big Ten. There is no value. There's no value in this for either one of them, right? They're the power brokers when it comes to college football. Whatever they're proposing, equity shares and all this stuff, even though they'll get more equity shares. I mean, what's the benefit for the SEC and the Big Ten to do this, right? Now, there's a benefit for Syracuse and Louisville and, some of these football schools. Sure, there's a benefit. Cincinnati, Chris, I'm going to give you Cincinnati Bearcats a shout out. There's definitely a benefit for them in this, but SEC and Big Ten, there's no benefit. They can't even get the power brokers to the table to even listen to this, because number one, they're in bed with the television networks, ESPN, CBS. That contract's running to 2029, 2030. What is it? 7 billion, I don't know, some ridiculous number. Like, and even if somehow they worked out that they could figure out a way to get out of the contractually, which they can't. But even if they could, that contract is still tied into other sports. It's not just football. And people don't realize that. I mean, these contracts are really, really intricate when it comes to that. But the SEC and the Big Ten gain nothing in creating this super conference, because they are the super conference. So I don't see it happening. I think it's it's an investment group, if I'm not a hedge fund firm or whoever it may be that's proposing this. But I think college football needs to find an answer, but it won't be this.
Yeah, and Lee, I know you're going to go, but Marv, you talked about that. I think they're looking at 5%. The universities would own 5% of the league as well. So it's interesting concept. But Lee, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Look, I mean, I know Marv think there's only two leagues in football, the SEC and the Big Ten. I mean, and for all you people out there that think I'm a SEC hater, I'm from the great state of Arkansas. I'm a Razorback. So I'm vested in the SEC. I just don't have, what are those glasses you got to watch with the eclipse, Chris? What do they call them? Those are the glasses that Marv wears all the time. He's blinded by the sun. It's just ridiculous. Look, 10 8-10 team leagues with 8 wild cards. There are several college presidents are on the board that's working. The NFL is involved in this super league because the way they have it now is just not equitable. You know, you got the Big Ten and the SEC trying to dictate how many teams or guaranteed teams they get in. And remember, after 2025, the contract, as it's presently constructed, goes away, and they've talked about the putting the extension in. But look, 8-team, 10 conference, break up the SEC. I mean, let's stop this madness. Let's stop the madness.
Okay, let me pose a question to both of you real quick. Right. So say, for instance, this does happen. Like, okay, in the rose color world that you and Chris living in, I'm not going to lump you into this, Chris, but in this world that you guys are talking about here. So what happens to the other sports? Because you're going to have to try to, you got to underwrite something within this new super league that is going to equitably sustain all these other sports on college campuses. I mean, or are you just going to get rid of them? Because right now, that's what it does. It underwrites all these other sports, and it allows them to still compete. All those Olympic sports, I know a lot of us don't pay attention, but they're really important to some universities. They're really important to our Olympic farm system. They're really important to a lot of things. Like, what happens at that point? Because you're already starting to see, I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be a change, because there does need to be one, but you're already starting to see the young lady from Stanford, the basketball player who has another year of eligibility, the really good center. And she's foregoing her senior year and going on to the WNBA because she doesn't want to do the travel for the ACC, Stanford to the ACC. And she said it doesn't make sense. And it's not within her benefit. And a lot of her teammates feel the same way. So there has to be something done. But we're making all these rules based on the power structure, which is college football, but there are a lot of other factors that play into this. So what does that look like?
Well, Marv, I honestly believe that football is going to break away from all those other sports eventually, sooner than later. They're just going to separate, and it'll be a football-only negotiated league. Now, the money's still going to go back to the colleges, right? They're going to go back to the colleges. They still can fund some of these sports, but within that, Dr. O talks about the NIL deal. They'll be able to negotiate some NIL money with the actual players within this deal, within this new structure, and I think it's best for college football in general. Look, nobody watches the bowl games. Nobody wants to see bowl games. The bowl game system is over. It's done. Nobody wants to see that mess. That's a wasted month in December when we're off, and we could be watching playoff football in a structured manner that has 16 teams. That's a structured playoff. The Division II type playoff is where Division I needs to go. And so you can do that, Marv, with this current structure, 8-10 conferences. The winner gets the automatic bid and have 8 at-large bids and play it off. So the colleges are still going to get this money, and they can still fund some of these Olympic sports and some of these other sports. And then revenue sharing with the players, that'll put some control on how wild this is getting with NIL and everything. So I think you're going to see more traction on this. And, to be honest, the SEC, they're still going to get 3 or 4 teams in the playoffs every year, regardless, because they have 3, 4, 5 of the best teams in the country. So it still benefits the SEC because the bottom of the SEC is no good anyway. So I love it. I love it because it's going to go more to a NFL model, which, let's be honest, that's where college football is. It's a farm league right now for the NFL.
Let me say this real quick, Chris, because I know you probably want to add something. I want to speak for college athletes. Like, we say the bowl games don't matter, and we say that's not what we want to see, but it does matter to college athletes. It matters to the young man that I went to go see who plays at Ohio University, because I know his dad when they went to a bowl game at Coastal Carolina that culminated a hard work of a season that they put a lot of hard work into, and then they get celebrated at the end. It's a lot of work that college athletes put into to being athletes. So the bowl games celebrate the work that they put into. And for us to sit up here and say that they don't matter anymore because, those kids can't compete on a national level, I think that's the whole idea that is hard for me to start to kind of fathom. Like, we're cutting out a whole bunch of kids here that'll never sniff a NFL football field, that'll never sniff a college playoff, but put in the same amount of work and put in the same amount and make the same amount of sacrifices for universities and communities that the other guys make. So bowl games do matter to them. They get recognition. Some of them are seniors. They'll never play another down of football again. They'll never dribble a basketball again. I was one of them. Was fortunate to go to some NCAA tournament games, played in NIT, but we still put in the same amount of work, and it does matter to those kids. So it's just like the conversation is only about the upper echelon, and then you forget about all these other kids who put all this stuff on the line to be part of college athletics, and they're just forgotten about.
Well, and Marv, I don't mean, and I certainly didn't mean it didn't matter to the kids, because I know it does, but it doesn't matter to the ratings are terrible. The stadiums are half empty. Players are opting out left and right to train for the NFL. Players don't want to play. They don't matter. The bowls don't matter. And to the players, some of these players, I agree with you. They want to play because they put in the blood, sweat, and tears. But the grand scheme of things, and we're talking about the economics of college football, it don't matter. And so they're going to find a way. They're looking for ways to increase more revenue and to continue to develop this train, which is college sports and college football, to be more exact. And so the games don't matter. How many bowl games did you watch, Mark? I'll be honest.
I watched a lot.
If I'm flickering through, but I don't, those games in mid to mid-December to Christmas, I don't watch them anymore. It hurts me to see them on, because it just doesn't mean anything anymore.
And that's the unfortunate part about the economics of college football and college athletics now. Yes, do kids deserve to get paid? Absolutely. But we're taking college football and we're taking a very small percentage of it with the power brokers that be, and we're acting like that's good for all of college football when it's not. And it's not how the rest of college football operates. And who's the voice of the kids who will never see that type of fame, who will never see that type of notoriety, who will never see that type of money? Like, where's that voice? Because those are the kids and those are the programs that are going to get left behind. And we need to have, Teddy Keaton back on here so he can talk about that from an HBCU standpoint and how it really affects. But that's the part that I'm saying. But I mean, you make great points, Lee. It's definitely the economics of thing. But, when I sit back and think about this and all these kids who put in this hard work, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Bowl games are great for them to travel and see these different cities. And I wasn't even talking about from the players' perspective, because let's be honest, the players don't matter. Everything they've done up until this point says the players don't matter. So, you make great points about the player, but the economics of football, it's going towards. So don't rule out this super conference gaining some momentum in the near future, Chris.
And hey, before we go, I want to touch. Dr. O made a comment, and I think Marv, one of you guys, had brought up I think Marv did, the Olympic sports, and this really doesn't have to do with this per se, but I do want to touch on her comment, which was a great comment. So I have the pleasure of working at the Division III level. We don't have football, but Marv, you're right. Lee, you're right too on what you're saying. I had the pleasure of going to Missouri this year with our volleyball team. We made the national tournament, won our region, and the hard work that those girls put in, and the excitement. They went 1-2 at the tournament, but they won their first ever national tournament game in the history of the school. And I think that's where you have to watch out. So Marv, when you kind of touched on that, it hit me. And then I saw Dr. O make the comment. We can't forget about those student athletes who do the same thing as the football players. But Lee, on the other hand, you're absolutely right. It sometimes doesn't matter about the players. It's a business, and they're looking to bring in money. There's a lot going on. But I just wanted to touch on that because I thought Dr. Rowe made a great comment there. All right, guys, one more topic.
Great point, Chris.
Go ahead.
Great point.
Yeah.
No, great point, Chris. I was just saying, great point.
One more time. Again, thank you everybody for chiming in today. Great discussion. Keep it coming. We got one more topic here, and this is, I think, a very interesting one. Public funds. I know in Kansas City, and I believe what we talked, maybe Cleveland, was it? But I know definitely Kansas City on the ballot for the public to fund renovations and things like that, new stadiums. I'll start with you, Lee. Where do you see that going? I mean, is it the taxpayer responsibility to pay for this, or is it the organization's responsibility? I mean, I know every team's different, their ownership and the way things are in each city, but where do you see this? And do you think it's something that's going to hurt teams if they don't get passed on the ballots? And let's say it passes by 2%. You still got a lot of people who are against it, but their tax money is still going to come out.
Yeah. So for me, we have billionaires who could finance their own stadium. Jerry Jones financed AT&T Stadium himself. Now, he's a billionaire and one of the wealthiest people in the world, but he financed that stadium and has done a remarkable job. Shout out to the Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. But if you ask me if the public should fund these things, Chris, I say yeah. I say look at the cities. I think back to Seattle when they took the Supersonics from Seattle, Marv, when they moved to OKC, and the void in professional basketball out in Seattle. It matters. It absolutely matters. And when the Cardinals went to Arizona and, St. Louis didn't have a team before they got the expansion team. The reason they put a team back in there, one of the largest markets, of course, but it matters. And the void that these NFL cities, because right or wrong, football is king in this country and professional football rules everything, right? And so I think for the cities to invest, I think it's smart. And I think you don't want to be the city that loses a team, right? You don't want to be that city. The Colts, they lost Baltimore before, and it was doom and gloom until they got the Ravens back, right? Now, Dallas mayor is courting the Chiefs to come to Dallas. He said they can, hold two NFL teams. I doubt that. That's not going to happen. And he might lose the next election too. Jerry probably do something about that. But yeah, I think public money should be used. Now, there are a lot of other things, and before people start killing me about public money, there's certainly a lot of other things that public money can be used for. But these NFL teams bring value to the economy of these cities, and I really think that it's a good idea for the taxpayers to contribute to building some of these stadiums, Chris.
I mean, maybe Dallas could actually get a winner. If Kansas City decides to leave and go to Dallas, maybe this is a good move for Dallas. But if you were to ask me, I mean, I'm completely opposed. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum of where you are, Lee. I think there really needs to be some type of federal legislation or something in place that forbids billionaires from using taxpayer dollars to build or to renovate or to upgrade or whatever it is that they want to do. For instance, so if you really looked into the Kansas City deal here that's going on, what they're asking for just upgrades to Arrowhead Stadium. You know what the upgrades are? Club lounges, skyboxes, things of that nature. Nothing that the average ticket payer or average person is going to ever have an opportunity to experience. So we're allowing billionaires to take taxpayer, and we can get into the whole economics about this country and where we are now, and that's a whole nother topic for discussion. But we can allow billionaires who, like you just said, Jerry Jones financed AT&T Stadium on his own. He didn't ask for taxpayer dollars. He did it on his own. We're asking billionaire Lamar Hunt. They worth what? 4.6 billion, whatever it is that they're worth, maybe probably more than that. And you're asking taxpayers to fund your upgrades to Arrowhead Stadium when you got probably one of the best home field advantages in the NFL. I think it's an absolute atrocity. I think it's just another fleecing of Americans that we go by because of our obsession about sports and football. I think it's something that billionaires take advantage of because, we're so blinded by the fact that we're trying to get away from our boring ass everyday mediocre recycled lives that they feel like they can throw anything in front of us and say this will take you away from it for 2 hours. I think it's an absolute sham. That's what I actually think about it. But on the same sense, if you are a football fan and if it is that important to you, be very careful if you don't use taxpayer dollars. Oakland, Cleveland, who else can we? Seattle that you just brought up, Baltimore, San Diego. I mean, we can go down the list. And remember, if you lose a team, now you got to come up. Now taxpayer dollars you got to use taxpayer dollars. You got to pony up a whole bunch of more money just to try to get another team back. And you see how long it's taken Seattle to try to get one. They haven't gotten one, and other. So it's twofold. But do I think billionaires should be using taxpayer dollars to support their little playpens and their toys and the things that they do? Hell no. And I hate it.
Guys, real quick.
You made a great point, though, Chris.
Yep. That's what I was going to talk about. Yep.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, because that's what I was going to talk about. You talked about the upgrades to downtown Memphis. And then real quick, then Mav from LA had also mentioned that, the people in the neighborhood can't get into the games because of ticket prices. But I was going to touch on that, Memphis, so go ahead. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, no, I agree with Recycle Me. I mean, it was like, look, the renaissance that's downtown Memphis right now, let's take out the crime a little bit, of course, but the renaissance that's going on downtown is because of the Grizzlies. It's because of the Grizzlies. And the boom that what they've done is because they lured that team away from Vancouver and they moved it here. And so the economics of the city, the pride of the city. Now, you make a valid point, who's going to these games, and I get that. But I do know that these professional teams do make an investment back into the community. They do. They probably could give more money, but they do make an investment back to the city. But I think just for a multitude of reasons, having professional sports, and you made a great point, Marv, about the fixation on sports in this country. But that is what it is, and so to lose it, like you said, you may not ever get one back, and that could hurt the psyche of a city as well.
So to all my Memphis people, before we go real quick, what's going on with the pyramid these days?
It's a Bass Pro Shop.
I'll leave it at that. And I played a SEC tournament game in the pyramid. So what's going on with the pyramid these days, Memphis?
They made a killing selling at the Bass Pro. It's a Bass Pro Shop now, and then you just renovate downtown. Very valid point, but the FedEx Forum is certainly an upgrade. Certainly an upgrade.
Just wanted to say that. Y'all, Memphis people, y'all can kill me all you want to, but hey, I'm just speaking facts.
Hey, I got your back.
Yeah, Lee's got Memphis back. Hey guys, great conversation. I want to shout out to everybody who's been commenting. I mean, we feel like you guys are a part of our conversation. If we miss some of your comments, it's not on purpose. We're trying to read them as fast as we can as we're going through the conversation. But remember, join us here every Sunday because we want to have you and tell everybody about it. Share our stuff out there. We post our link out here on ISF Productions as well. It's on our Facebook. Everybody, we all have our own Facebook, Instagram. You'll be seeing a lot more. But guys, before we go, again, just to let you know, it was my WrestleMania update. The Drew McIntyre title reign did not last but 2 minutes because Damian Priest came and cashed in his Money in the Bank. So there's your WrestleMania update for the night.
Hey, Chris, Marv doesn't appreciate professional wrestling like we do.
I know that's why I'm doing it because I know he doesn't like it. But our producer Cash,
I appreciate it
behind the scenes.
I appreciate it, but
some updates.
But I also think that we might need to touch on this topic a little bit more next week because we got some power brokers that kind of know what they're talking about. That's making some comments about these SoFi, some of these arenas, and how we got some people that can really speak on to some things. So we might want to revisit this. So just a little.
Yeah. So Miss Lydia, please, I love that topic. Let's make a point of talking about that because I do think that's huge for the topic that we're discussing. And as we talked about, the people in the neighborhood can't get into these games. And so thank you for that comment. That was a powerful comment, and we certainly want to get that on the show, Marv. Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Yeah, we'll add that, and that's why we like everyone commenting, because we can get your opinion on what you want to hear us talk about. Sometimes we're a little bit limited on time, so I apologize to everyone. But hey, you guys have any final thoughts, Lee, before we go?
Looking forward to the championship game tomorrow. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And also just be looking for a Dak Prescott extension within the next couple of weeks. That's just what my sources tell me.
As Mark,
he got that magic. He got that magic 8-ball. He's shaking in the background in the corner over there. The what does it say? The gods from above tell me that's what he's shaking right now. But hey, UConn by 15 tomorrow night.
All right.
I got UConn by 10. So I'll be in between both you guys there, but that's what I'm looking at. All right. Again, this is After the Buzzards on ISF Productions. I got my Hall of Famer over here, Marv Orange. I got my Professor Lee Jones. I'm Chris Sawyer. Great show tonight, everybody. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the game tomorrow, and we'll talk to you next Sunday.